Speaking of Stone Cold Steve Austin, the man who had the chance to face Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania, Kevin Owens, was on the After the Bell podcast with Corey Graves and Vic Joseph this week, talking all about a whole number of things, of course, but the most important thing was Kevin Owens reflecting back on the match that he got to have with Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania. Check out this clip.
It's been a few weeks now. We are now a few weeks away from WrestleMania Saturday, where you stood across the ring from Stone Cold Steve Austin. What was going through your mind at that time? And now that you've had a few weeks to look back and reflect on what that meant, what did WrestleMania this year mean to Kevin Owens?
Well, it's all downhill from here, really. You know?
I admire the optimism.
I say that with the most optimistic point of view I can have, really.
Right.
I mean that in a good way. It was really unbelievable. It's still unbelievable. Sometimes I'll have my moments while I'm not doing anything, I'm just kind of sitting around, and I'll just pull it up on my phone, and I'll specifically watch the moment where the ref rings the bell. And I still can't believe it happened. It's really hard to process what happened, honestly. It's hard to put into words.
It's a fucking dream match, okay? Kevin Owens is roughly my age, right? We both grew up watching Attitude Era Pro Wrestling, and to think that when you're a little kid idolizing Stone Cold Steve Austin, flipping the bird at everybody and dropping stunners all around the ring, that you're going to grow up and you're going to main event WrestleMania with that guy in fucking 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, depending on when you were watching, people would think you're insane. There was no rational way to think that would be a logical thing that would happen. But for Kevin Owens, that was a thing that happened. And he said in this interview, where do I go from here? It's all downhill from here. And it is. It's absolutely all downhill from here. Once you have main evented WrestleMania against Stone Cold Steve Austin, I'm sorry, there's nowhere else in the professional wrestling business you can go. There's no more up. Maybe you get a match, a WrestleMania main event with The Rock. That could be comparable, right? If they were to come back and be like, okay, KO, next year you're going to be working The Rock at WrestleMania Hollywood. That would be a step up. Anything less than that, it's all downhill from here. And that's fine. I mean, he could hang it up today and call it a fucking a great career. But Owens has lots of career in front of him. A lot of good shit in this interview. He talks about the reason why he re-signed with WWE as opposed to going to AEW, where all of his friends are. Which he admits he's still very good friends with those guys to this day. Talks to them, texts them, all that shit. And he knew that if he went there, he'd have a lot of fun and it would be a good shit. But ultimately, WWE threw way too much money at him. They made it crystal clear for Owens that they wanted him to stay in WWE. Owens said Vince McMahon personally let him know how much he wanted him to stay in WWE. So when Vince is letting you know personally, bro, I need you here. I want you here. And I'm going to pay you a ridiculous amount of money. And hey, by the way, just a long shot here, but I might be able to get you a WrestleMania main event against Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, I'm sure that was never said, but I mean, fuck. What a reward for being loyal to the WWE and sticking it out. And, I think Owens would have been great in AEW. Obviously, he fits right in with that style, with that crew. But, I don't blame him or Sammy for staying with the WWE. I think both of them are seen now as key players on the roster, right? I mean, look at Sammy's match that he had at WrestleMania working with fucking the Jackass guys, Knoxville and them. And by the sounds of it, also from this interview with Kevin Owens, it sounds like Sammy had to kind of push for that match a little bit to Vince or to the higher ups backstage, right? and he was the one who basically laid out the whole match, and and was responsible for how amazing that Jackass match came across. Now, if you're a Jim Cornette type guy, you think that was an abomination, but I mean, I'm a strong, firm believer that wrestling needs to be a buffet, that you got to have your great, believable, strong in-ring talent, but you also got to have a little bit of foolery on the side, because it breaks up the show. It gives you that little bit of, it's that let me up a moment that Bruce Pritchard always talks about, right? These are the kind of things that, because a real emotional, believable match is going to suck you in, and it's going to get you passionate about it. And you're going to be on the edge of your seat for it. But for a match like this is just fun. It's laughs. It's levity. I think it has its place in wrestling. And on a major show, I think a major show needs to be a buffet. I think the smaller you get, the more you can niche down. Like Ring of Honor, I really strongly believe in should be a pure wrestling style. I think with Tony Khan taking over Ring of Honor, I don't think he should try to make it like AEW, which has a lot of the crash TV. If you watch Dynamite, it's constantly moving. It's bing, 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 bing. Lots of shit going on. Afterbirth, says Jim Cornette, calls it. With Ring of Honor, it should be very technical, very in-ring oriented, almost sports-like in a lot of ways. You can also do the opposite on an indie level. You can get ridiculous like a DDT has in the past. I'm okay with all that because it's niched down so tightly. But on a big, broad level like a WrestleMania, you need that smorgasbord. And when you look at guys like a Sami Zayn in his match with the Jackass crew, with Johnny Knoxville, and you look at Kevin Owens and his brawl, his walk and brawl around the arena with Stone Cold Steve Austin, this is the way that you set up a super show, a buffet style. And Kevin Owens, look, both these guys, Kevin and Sammy, but Kevin specifically, man, he's out there living his dream. Working, and Sammy, I guess, too, because if you came up from the Stone Cold Attitude Era, you were probably a fan of Jackass on MTV, too. So, different levels, I suppose, but I highly recommend seeking out this interview with Kevin Owens on After the Bell. Really revealing, really in depth, and just to hear the passion in his voice talking about working with Steve Austin, and just how much, and how when he re-signed with WWE, he told himself that this run is about having fun. And at this point, Owens has accomplished everything he could possibly accomplish in wrestling. He's been a heavyweight champion. He's been, U.S. champion. He's beaten John Cena. He's been the NXT champion. He's worked with Sami Zayn on the main event, working with your best friend on the big show. He's now WrestleMania main evented, and he's with Stone Cold Steve Austin, no less. So, at this point, he's done everything that there is to do as far as achieving the highest level, and I mean the highest level. Kevin Owens has officially, with this past WrestleMania, achieved the highest level of professional wrestling you can possibly attain. I mean, very few people, and nobody in the last 20 years, but very few people in history can say that they were able to share a ring with Stone Cold Steve Austin on the biggest stage of WrestleMania. So, wow. A main event, I mean, what more can you ask for? Hey, thanks for checking out that clip. Don't forget to check out other clips here on the channel. And while you're there, throw a like, throw a subscribe. And don't forget to check out full episodes each and every Sunday of the Pro Wrestling Podcast.